I'm so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let me turn it over to Dimitri.
Hello, Dimitri. Nice to meet you, Mr. Vinay. Um, I made a very straightforward ADM just to practice all like the basic stuff of setting it up. I'll start it off. I set up some. I set up a policy with assumptions and defenses just to explain some of the preemptive defenses and stuff. So the first assumption I had was all the data logs within the system that this employee uses are monitored constantly, meaning like anytime there's any logins, data transfers, anything like that, that's tracked somewhere so it can be reviewed. The second assumption is that employees undergo training to detect, identify, and report any malicious links or emails. So if there's any attempts at phishing, it's reported and sent up and not interacted with. Some defenses I put in place where employees will only be allowed access if they're on an authorized host machine is just for the sake of the example. I just figured it would be a pretty decent one. Um, Second one, any abnormal network traffic will be reported to the security team. That goes into the one of the other incident responses later down, and then the employees must report and not engage with suspicious emails as a third kind of defense, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
so this f- to start off, its first attack would be employee receives a phishing email. So I was debating. I was trying to figure out exactly how to word which parts of this threat model. I wasn't sure if like an employee receives a phishing email would be a precondition, and then them clicking it would count as an attack, or how to do that. For this example, I went with the fact that the employee received the email was an attack. Um, a preemptive defense I put was that the employee doesn't click the link and reports the email because they
Mhm.
received training to identify any phishing and report it up. Uh, an incident response for in case the employee clicks the email and gets their credentials leaked would be the attacker tries to gain network access but is denied because they are not on an authorized host machine. Right? It goes back into
Mhm.
discussions before. They can't. They try to use the credentials, but because their host machine doesn't match up, they can't get through. Right. In a case where the hacker is just good enough to bypass that security measure, however they can, uh, and they do access the network. I have two incident responses. First one is security team uh, I is identified that someone who shouldn't be accessing the network is accessing it, and they terminate those specific credentials so that person can no longer access the system. And then on
Mhm.
top of that, any information that they interacted with, like extracted, anything like that, is like track marked so we can review it and then make any further decisions from there. Be it if we have to contact the consumer to let them know something's happened with their information, or if there's a security breach, or anything like that.
Mhm.
Uh, General few things I wasn't sure about was, or it's not necessarily I'm not sure. It's just I would like to have ways to include some kind of a context between some of these blocks, like in between this attack where the attacker bypasses the host machine, and then
Mhm.
two the security team terminates the compromised credentials. I'd like there to be not necessarily precondition, but some kind of gray box to be like, all right, the attacker accesses the network. Uh, the network somehow identifies that this person is not who they say they are. They then
Mhm.
send something to the security team, that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, that
Yeah.
was like a big thing. I was trying to figure out, but couldn't quite get a grasp on.
Mhm.
And then the second one I had was in regard to this right here. I saw your example, uh,
Mhm.
and then I saw you had these like at signs with phishing, and then in the original you had I forget it was something else. It was at and then something else. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what these do. I was wondering if you could clarify like what these do, if there's any
Mhm.
functionality behind them, or if they're just like a note kind of thing just for us using it.
Yeah. So I'll go with the second question first. The at symbols, these are basically tags. Tagging is one of the way you connect attacks and defenses. So you have those 5 rules which matches attack and defense.
Mm.
But sometimes your defense is so generic that you can't match it to a statement in an attack. So as a last resort, you can use tags, So when you put at phishing on an attack and a defense, the system automatically connects them together in the graph.
Okay, that's actually very useful to know. So, for example, if I were to do if I had something else completely different incident response, and I didn't connect it necessarily, like if I as I'm creating it, if I don't connect it with
Yeah.
a when then statement,
Yeah.
but I tag it with phishing, it'll still connect it with the line.
Yes.
That's super useful to know. Thank you.
But only thing is that it cannot figure out whether it's an incident response or a preemptive defense. So it assumes that it's a preemptive defense and continues with it.
Okay, that's good
So
enough.
there's a limitation there. So this is meant to be a option of last resort if you are not able to find any kind of linkage between attack and defense.
Okay.
Now, coming back to your original question of you wanting to put more context in between, this is typically a symptom of a larger design where you have multiple interacting entities, and the attack or a defense is probably happening in a different entity and then comes back to the one that you are working on. That's one reason. Second is that normally it also means that your attack or defense definitions are very generic. So you may want to actually break them up into smaller chunks.
Mhm.
So between an attack and a defense, if you think there is a context information missing or an attack step that adds as a context, for example, taking your network detection. Now, it's an indicator that you will have to first identify what sort of a network it is. Because in this graph, we are not talking whether this is a cloud network which has zero trust, or this is a network that's on the company premise, where even the email server is running on the company premise, on the company network. So those kind of environmental information is something you have to capture. One way to do it is add an assumption section for the phishing itself, like how you have assumptions in policy. For the model, it also you can define an assumption, in which case you are saying that this is an on-prem network or this is a cloud network.
Mm.
And then in your attack or defense, you can put a defense step where you explain how the network is detecting that access.
Mm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Yeah, Rod, that's all I have for this for
Mhm.
my moderator.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is make sure that you guys connected. Vinay, so
Mhm.
Dimitri's from Brooklyn, and
Mhm.
he's going to
Oh,
go
okay.
back to New York City, right?
Yep.
Dimitri, can you talk a little bit about what your plans are, after you leave the army?
Oh yeah. So once I ETS, I'm moving right back to Brooklyn. I'm going to City Tech Community College. I'm going to school for engineering. I want to get a graduate degree in mechatronics engineering from NYU. In while I go to school, I would like to work in cybersecurity.
Mhm.
One, because I'm gonna need some supplementary income on top of my BAH. But two, I'd rather have a job that is more in line with the field I'm working in rather than just a random job. Because when you have a random job, it's hard to keep focus and like have energy to keep focus on what you want to do. But if I'm working in cybersecurity and then studying in engineering, there's a lot of overlap there, which one also it gives me a nice skill set, but also it keeps me. I feel like it keeps me like on track and driven.
Mhm.
That's my plan. After I graduate, I'm hoping to transfer from working as a security analyst to working as an engineer, and then just going from there.
Mhm. Nice. And even with mechanical or physical systems, you still have security as a question. I
Mm.
have worked in physical security for almost 10 years before I got into cybersecurity. There too, adversarial modeling is a very common practice. So attack and defense modeling is just a specialized version of adversary modeling. So you should be able to use this there.
Oh, that's good. No, thank you.
All right. So what I want to do is, Dimitri, you've kind of worked with the team to come up with different attack and defense models. Could you go ahead and pass the baton to someone else who's ready to give a presentation? So everyone who presents, if you could talk about what was your inspiration for your attack and defense model, and then talk about the scenario, and then talk about the attacks and defenses, and then any questions you may have.
Greg, do you want to go next? Roger that.
Yeah, I can.
Boom. Hey Rod, how do I pass the baton, so to say?
If you just stop presenting, I have a present button.
Okay. Stop presenting. Alright, that should do it.
Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't really have much inspiration for it other than I was just looking for another attack that I could get a lot of mitigations and attacks with. So there's not a whole lot backing that. I use ChatGPT to help me find some like front end type attacks and have gotten kind of in the weeds with it. And I have arrows like crazy, which is insane. So I've been trying to connect all of these today and make sense of them across, the they just keep getting crazier as I add things. So my thought process though was taking the MITRE ATT&CK framework and just literally walking through the description. And what it's basically doing is it's cross-site scripting, which is taking that and actually implementing it once something is inputted, in this case where there's no validation. And then if it is, then it's actually got a good preemptive defense, and then that carries over to here. But I guess my problem in general is understanding the attack more so than just because like you were saying with Dimitri's, he's got a little too generalized. I think I might have the same issue, but I also might be being like not specific in like the actual pathways. And that's why I have so many like crazy whopper jawed spaghetti going on. But from what I can tell, all the mitigations here are what are listed on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so I was just trying to implement those and connect them to the attacks that were there. So, and the other thing, I guess a good question for me is this FOMOSEC, the red lines here. I definitely looked into that. Is that, are they red because they're supposed to be completely avoided? Or are they just a kind of like a heads up, like, hey, you should avoid these if you can? Because in this case, I need to say a precondition in the content security policy because there's so many of them, right?
Yep. So I'll take the last question first. FOMOSEC is a way to say that you have a defense that has no attack.
Okay.
Like the term FOMO says, like basically you're so afraid that you have basically dumped all defenses into the system without knowing if it's mitigating an actual attack. It's a way to tell the modeler that maybe you should figure out if there is an attack for this defense.
Okay.
So the two red lines that you see, one going into policy, only two of the defenses are connected to attacks. The remaining are all just direct defenses. So that's the reason why it's showing you FOMOSEC there.
Okay.
The other one at the bottom is basically, if you see after a given statement, it's only connecting to two defenses. There are no attacks that connect up to these defenses.
Right.
Again, it's assuming that you have a defense that's not mitigating an attack. So it's asking whether do you really need them or not. It's a way to nudge the modeler that when you have a large model, it's very easy to be lost in all the spaghetti of lines, like you said. And these red lines are basically to tell you that maybe something's missing here.
Sure. Okay.
And coming to this jumble of lines that you said, this is a very common thing. Even I face these when I'm modeling my threat models. One of the indicator for this is that when there are a lot of lines going from a precondition, it's probably a good idea to push it into an assumption, because it looks like many of your attacks and defenses are considering the same precondition, which means you may want to make it a model assumption.
Got it.
A second indicator I have seen is that when I have a really large model that tries to cover everything, you have a lot of given statements connecting up to a bunch of attacks and defenses, but there are also attacks and defenses that don't use this given statement. Now, that's an indicator or a symptom that you may want to break up your model into smaller, focused models rather than a larger generic ones.
Okay.
That also helps you when you are reusing models. So, for example, a small focused model just on handling HTTP headers can be used anywhere where you're using HTTP as a protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a kind of a best practice that you can use to make readability or improve your readability.
Right on. Thank you.
Any other question or anything else you wanted to for me
Yeah,
to let?
I think if I think of it, I'll come back to you because I feel like there
Mhm.
was another one I had, but I don't want to. We can move forward. And that was a great answer so far. Appreciate it.
I want to give Greg some props because he wants to be a TPM, and he's decided to dive into this. You know, like learning attack defense modeling, anything programming, cybersecurity. I just wanted to see if you had any advice for Greg as he is straddling two fields, right? Like I think he's looking at this as, and I just have my opinion. I think it's a great thing he's doing because he really understands the field. But if you had anything advice for Greg, Vinay, I know you've been in the field for a long time.
Yeah.
Given what he's like to do.
Yeah. So TPM in security field is kind of spread all across the spectrum. I have seen large corporate or conglomerates that are heavily regulated. They give a lot of responsibilities to TPMs there. For example, industrial automation companies, their TPMs are actually supposed to track all the open risks that are being monitored, and I would say work with the product owners, audit folks, bunch of other people to make sure those risk lists are maintained up to date, and somehow people are looking into it and trying to fix it. PPM or program management office has a lot of say, a lot of control over how the project goes if they see that something's not happening. I have seen program managers who would just go ballistic because the list is just growing and not number of risks is not going down, and they have that authority because it's a very regulated industry. On the other end, you have startups where TPMs basically do basic project management. So it really depends on which industry you are entering. And now, attack defense modeling may not directly help you in either scenario, but using this as a way to communicate between engineering folks is a very easy approach to do. For example, you were able to model this. Now, let's assume I am an engineer, you are a TPM, Rod is probably the security guy. And when Rod makes that model, even though you haven't worked on security, I haven't worked on security, it's very easy to read the diagram and try to figure out what's going on. We'll still have questions for him, but it's not like you are flying blind. So this diagramming method will definitely help. And that was one of the reasons why I started working on this tool, because it was very difficult to explain it to non-engineering folks. So this kind of helped me there.
It's already helping me too. Like even just like understanding how an attack or a defense is going to relate to each other. I mean, those relationships matter. So yeah, that makes sense. That's good.
And one thing you will see if you switch over to TPM, you will see that when projects are on a tight deadline, engineers, the first question they'll ask is, do you really think I need this defense? You will see that as a very common question all over the place. And this model will kind of help you answer that, because then I can tell these are the 4 attacks that this defense mitigate. And if you want me to prove it, let me write an attack script or a pen test for you. And so this tool is also helping TPMs kind of break the friction between engineers versus security.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially the visual aspect of it, because what we do is so, I think, Greg, you've said it before, that it's very abstract.
Yeah.
And being able to, even though you had all those crazy lines, I think it's better to have something on paper that we could talk about and we could throw up on the board virtually.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it all has logic to it. So it's not like it's just chaos. Like the lines actually make sense. They mean something. It's just whether or not there's 15 or 5.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, thank you for presenting, Greg. Anybody who's next? Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay, Caden.
One sec.
And then, Caden, could you just introduce yourself and what you do in the Army, where you'd like to go back to?
Yeah. Well, I'm Caden Weiss. In the Army, I was a CH-47 crew chief. Basically, what that entails is just knowing the CH-47 Chinook forward, backward, and sideways. In a nutshell, fix it as it's falling out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
When I get back, I intended to go to college, go to Boise State University out of Idaho, go to the blue turf, and then I currently I'm not very sure of my career path, to be completely honest. Just I'm kind of just leaving it up to fate, if whatever works is probably what's gonna happen for me, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds weird, but thinking about it on such a large scale, it stresses me out a little too much, and I'm just gonna let it happen, man.
Yeah. I would say I was partly in your place when I was in high school, to be honest, because I'll give you my story. I loved programming. I got my first computer when I was in ninth grade, and I immediately fell in love with programming. But I was never sure what am I going to do with it.
Yeah.
So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I have worked in automotive, I have worked in server-side programming, cloud, all over the place. The thing is, what kept on driving me was the love for programming and the fact that I would like to solve big problems using my programming skills. Like I'm always looking for the next big problem that I can solve with my skills. And that's what keeps you interested. Because if something doesn't keep you interested, doesn't matter if it pays really well, you will start hating that job.
I understand that 100%, honestly.
Yeah. So it's okay to be not sure to start with. It's just that you need to focus on what you like and just see if you can go down that direction.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I've been a career mechanic virtually my whole life, and when given the option to do a career skills program through the Army, I was like, hey, like I said, I've been a mechanic my whole life. Why don't I try something new? Something that doesn't really involve turning a wrench. And so doing computer work has always interested me. It's just I never had any sort of practical application for it, so I never really pursued it. And so when Rod's name came into my head or came across a CSP desk, I was like, hey, let's take advantage of this and let's see if I can learn something. And I'm learning quite a bit from Rod. He's a very good teacher.
Thank you.
Yep. Kudos to Rod.
Kudos to Rod. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what we got here is a ransomware ADM. And I chose ransomware because I think it's interesting. That's really the main reason why. I think ransomware is interesting. I think it's cool or not cool, or however you want to take that somebody could, literally install malware on a corporation's computer or a company's computer and hide stuff from people and demand money for it, just for the hell of it. And so that's basically what this ADM is about. So reality, your standard company, corporation, and we're gonna go as bare bones as we possibly can here. So your attacker is going to send some sort of malware link, whether it's through an email, or like a cool or funny picture or whatever. In a sense, it's almost like a phishing attack. But during that phishing attack, it installs a ransomware program. And once again, attack and defense is pretty bare bones. So when the attacker sends the link, you have the option, hey, I'm not going to click on this link because I'm smart and I don't click on, strange links. Or you're curious and you're like, oh my gosh, that link looks so awesome. I have to click on it. I have to see what's going on there. And boom. Your attacker is going to bypass your security, your security software, and let's see, security software denies data encryption. So this would be one of your attack mitigations here. So let's say you did have security software. So if you clicked on that link, obviously the malware that's installed or that's going to get installed on your computer, it's going to bypass all of this. And at this point here, your attacker is actually kind of winning because it is encrypted the data that is coming, or the data that the company needs. But in order to mitigate all of it, you just pull a backup, or user will pull backup data. So rendering the entire system, or rendering the entire malware process just useless. And this is coming straight out of the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And like I said, it's completely bare bones, but this is what I got.
Okay. So give me a second. So what you have here is more of an abstract layout of how ransomware follows. So I would say this is a kind of kill chain depiction of your attack model. So if you have looked at Lockheed Martin's kill chain steps, they have, I think, like 5 or 6 steps. So what you have covered is basically those, and peppered it with defenses. Normally, when you see ransomware, it's much more involved. You have entities involved in this whole process. And I don't know whether you got a chance to look at the ADDB repository I have.
I don't think I have yet. No.
Okay. So I actually tried to model that for the MGM hack that happened last year. Now, MGM basically fell for the same kind of an attack. Somebody hit an IT guy in MGM with ransomware or phishing email, something like that. I have it in the model. And then they basically went ahead and encrypted everything on their network. Or at least that's what the blogs say. So let me give you the link to that repository, and you actually can see what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, yeah. This is a public repository, so anybody can take a look at it. So if you give me a moment to share my screen, I'll show you how it would probably look in real life. Yeah, share screen. Yeah. So if you see here, basically it was a 2-part series. You had a scatter spider hacker gang that basically tried phishing the target employee, and they were engaged by the actual breach guys to get access into the network. So you got this initial network access, and then there was a malicious Windows driver that was deployed on that person's machine. And then once they had control of the machine, they started basically going through the network, encrypting everything. Now, if you look at casino.adm, the way I got all these details was from the single blog in Bleeping Computer. Okay. So you start reading the blog and start seeing what were the attack steps, what were the defense steps. And within like an hour, you can easily build a model like this.
These guys really did a lot before any sort of defense was even remotely thought of. That's crazy.
Yeah. So again, if you look at the defenses that the blog says, is basically their Okta agent was breached. So that's a piece of software running on their client. And all they did was disconnect the Okta servers. That's really was not going to help them much, because they have already a foothold in the network. Disconnecting a few servers on the network is really not going to kick the attackers out. Now, the true picture nobody knows, because none of that was published. All this detail that I got was just from the blogs that I've seen online. So there is this directory called in the wild in ADDB there. So there I have put attack organizations, where Scatter Spider is a separate model there. And then you also have somebody trying to use GitHub Dependabot to inject malware into Git repositories. Again, it's a very simple attack. So you can probably reference ADDB as a way to see how real ransomware attacks happen in the wild. And another thing also is that when you have a large deployment, normally you have servers or entities in the network that play a role in that whole story. So in the example I showed, there were ESXi servers, there were Okta agent servers, there was an IT person's machine, then probably there were a few other machines that they had hit. And writing attack defense models for every entity in this whole network helps you a lot in figuring out the true nature of the ransomware effort. Like, what exactly happened? You have to figure it out by looking at how each entity was breached. What was the attack possible? What was the defense possible? Why did the defense didn't happen? So if, let's assume you are called in by a company to analyze a breach, that level of detail is what you will need to even figure out what's going on. Well,
Okay.
it's a good start. What you showed was a very good start, because it basically hit upon the entire cyber kill chain. But in reality, what will help you is to basically blow it up maybe 20 times to get to the real picture.
Awesome. Well, there's no way that I can take full credit for it. I mean, Dimitri and Greg were a very big help in helping me build this. And so I can't take all the credit for it. And I do want to give out a big shout out to Dimitri and Greg for helping me out along this. Thank you, guys.
Cool.
And thank you, Vinay, for the for that whole repository full of stuff. I'm definitely going to look into that.
Yeah, and me and Rod are thinking of collaborating on adding more details, and we are also looking for contributors. So over time, when you are working on some public or open source technology, building ADMs, we would be more than happy to include it in that repository.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Caden. All right, who would like to go next? So William, I think you have the last model, right?
Yes, me and Mabel do actually. But I'm gonna present it, and she's gonna be the one to show the presentation. Hi, Vinay. Nice to meet you again. In the Army, I'm a 92 Fox. That's a petroleum and supply specialist, and I'm a manager in that. Currently enrolled in Syracuse University. I graduate this fall in cybersecurity, and after that, I'm going to do my master's in cybersecurity in Hawaii at Hawaii Pacific University. I've been getting some leads and opportunities for jobs in cybersecurity at the entry level. And also I have a master's in business, so I've been also getting some leads in business. So cybersecurity wasn't my first love, but I'm starting to learn a bit of it. So that's my introduction. Mabel, would you have anything to say before we start?
My name is Mabel Frimpong. I'm a 25 uniform in the Army, and I'm working on my bachelor's for business administration, data analytics, and yeah, I'm going back to New York City. That's where I'm from. And
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
So we actually just started like with the ADM model today. So it's not 100% done, I believe, but I can talk you through it because I have a grasp of the subject I'm talking about.
Sure.
Okay. Mabel, but can you show it on the screen? At least what we have.
It's not showing?
No.
So when you click on the present button in the streaming, it'll ask you whether you want to show a window or an entire desktop. So I think you'll have to pick the right option there.
Oh, let me do it again. Is it showing now?
No.
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 Oh.
You made sure to give the proper permissions, right, when you joined the call.
You should have at the very bottom of the screen. There should be a present button.
Yeah, I pressed that and it says it's sharing, but I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There we go. Everybody,
Yep.
Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe it just took a moment to catch up.
Yeah, so we're not done in any stretch, but we started with work on it today. So basically, we'll talk about the Bumblebee a malware attack, which is a new attack that started off in March of 2022. It's a phishing attack. I'm sorry. Oh, I just want to say something. It's a phishing attack. But the incident is that from the activity here is that someone is sending an email to the business, and the employee opened up the email, which allows the hacker to obtain a sensitive data and personal information from their macro, VBA, and PowerShell. With that being said, then now, but the server is compromised. They have all the information that they need to play and manipulate, but the consumer software. So if they have banking information exposed, then it's exposed. If they have a social security exposed. So some of the best tips to do for those type of situations is to educate your employees, because it will always be a lot cheaper to invest in cybersecurity than to pay out the legal fees, because everybody information got compromised. So have some type of a cyber training for the consumers and everybody that's a part of it. As far as phishing emails, obviously, as Kaden mentioned, you probably shouldn't open something that you don't know, not aware of. Tend to question yourself to see if this makes sense to you or not. And as for the vulnerabilities, make sure that you're doing like the basic things like the EPT, but that's the email penetration testing. If no one knows, ensuring that you have strong settings, because that plays a big part. Even though you may not open a leak, there's other ways that you get spam without opening anything, and someone was able to figure out your information in that regards. So be very cautious and know how to filter out your emails. So then something such as like the Bumblebee malware don't happen to you. Next step over will be the command and control establishment. So having Sorry, just the part. Instructions. Yeah, so tend to like establish more like an antivirus approach, like like a Trojan horse or something in that regards, but to put into your software so it doesn't get hacked as easily. You got anything to say, maybe?
Was this a question to me?
Oh no, Mabel is also like, but she's the co-host for this presentation, so and I didn't want to take any of her shine.
Yeah, they could also back up their data on external storage devices or clouds so that they don't. Yeah. And monitor for unusual activities, change password if needed. Yeah, that's all I got.
Make a stronger coding in a Python as well. So, but their server should get easily accessed or debugged by a hacker. So, but these things are important because in the U.S. it's massive in cybersecurity still with consumers being hacked and a new phishing attack. I think everyone should learn about it and be educated from a personal standpoint to business. And as far on a larger scale, the business, there should be some type of a defense in depth approach if they can talk with your community and ensure that you're doing all the best practices to avoid that lawsuit.
Yeah. So to talk about your model, if you see you have a lot of given statements, and when you have a lot more given statements compared to attacks and defenses, it's an indicator that probably each of the given statement is an attack in itself, because you can chain attacks as well as chain defenses. So for example, taking the first one, a phishing email containing a malicious attachment is sent to employee, that itself is an attack step. So you can expand it out into a full attack specification. And then the delivery of Bumblebee malware can say that given this previous attack steps title, this next step happens. So what you'll start seeing is a much wider model rather than a taller model, where you will see attack steps being chained together, and then you can start working on defending your system against each step. For example, going back to this given statement, phishing email containing a malicious attachment is sent to an employee. A very common practice in companies is every time a new email comes in, if they see an attachment, they put it through a scanner, even before it's delivered. So a defense for that can be that have an email scanner deployed on your servers or an email server, so that it's scanned first before the attachment is delivered. Now, the way the attacker works around that is to make the attachment really difficult to be scanned, or hiding it so well that the scanner doesn't find anything. So now you will start seeing like a cat and mouse game between the attacker and the corporate defenders. And that's the real intent of the ADM tool, is to make you think like both attacker and defender and play it out like a cat and mouse game. Now, if you look at military strategies also work that way. When you're planning for some kind of a mission, you will always think about what your adversary is going to do when you do a very specific step, and how are you going to work around that. So this basically tries to replicate that kind of a thinking into a like a graph model.
Okay.
But you have at least spent a lot of time on getting all the preconditions, and basically all the details are in place here. It's just that you have to move them around, redefine them as attacks and defenses, and you should be good to go.
Thank you.
Vinay, I just want to throw one question out here because I know Joe and I are running out of time. The So both Mabel and Dimitri are going back to work around the city. That's kind of where they're from. They would like to go. And I know Mabel isn't necessarily going to cybersecurity, but she is going into business. Kind of probably more on the business side. I just wanted to see if you had any advice for anybody who was at their age level, kind of at the start of their careers. How do they get into the New York City like business scene to get a job? How did they get their start?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So business wise, I don't have too much experience out there, but what I have seen is, in general, any big city is, if you're part of communities, like there are conferences or ad hoc meetups that people do to just network. Many a times in business and non-technical fields, networking plays a much bigger role than your skills. Like for an engineer, it's very easy to say that I have done these things in my past and maybe have a GitHub repository to showcase that. So you don't have to go talk to anybody. You can just apply for that position, show your skills as proof, and you get your foot into the door. Non-engineering or non-technical professions, I've seen that networking plays a very big part in that. And I'm pretty sure New York City, if it's New York City, there are enough meetups where you will meet people who are already working in a specific company or a specific area. So that's network definitely helps there.
All right, everyone, we're running out of time. Anybody have any last questions, either about ADM, ADSM? We'll have another live stream next week if you have questions, but we're all going to continue working on our models. And I know Joe and I have been working on an ADSM together, so we'll probably have more to talk about, Vinay, next week. But I want to thank you. Thank you for sharing your time, and your time is very valuable. You know, everybody, I just want to say thank you to Vinay, because you brought this to us. It's an awesome tool. You get a chance to see a little bit of the genius before you're driving a Ferrari.
I don't know when I'm gonna drive a Ferrari though.
All right, everyone. I'm going to close the stream out. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.